Hi, everyone. I'm about to talk to Mike Taylor. He's the CTO over at WWT, that's Worldwide Technologies. Mike is a super, great guy. He's keynoted at the AI Networking Summit in the spring of 2024, and he had so many really great insights and thought leadership during that keynote. I wanted to explore some of those points in more detail. So we're going to really dive into a lot of different things. In here, he'll talk to us a little bit about his career journey, and then we're going to dive really quickly into like our industry and what the arc of this transition with AI is starting to look like. So we'll talk about things that IT teams can do in the short term, and also what the kind of trajectory and what the arc of this looks like in the long term. So we hit a lot of different topics. It's a lot of fun too. I had a really great time, chatting with Mike, and I think you'll have a good time listening to it as well. So without any further, let's get back with Mike, the great Mike Taylor. Welcome, Mike.
I don't know about that, but yeah, happy to be here and appreciate you having me, Nick.
So excited. Actually, I've been looking forward to this like all day. I'm really looking forward to the conversation that we're about to have. And also, like your keynote at the AI Networking Summit was freaking stellar. So
Thank
we're
you.
going to put kind of a link to that in the notes, so everyone who didn't see it, got a chance to see it, as well. So and some of the things that you talked about there will probably make their way into our conversation, as
Sure.
well. But I thought it'd be great to start with making sure everybody knows, who you are. Like, WWT is like oxygen, right? It's like it's all over the place. You know, and those who are close to the company know you, but those who maybe are not may not. So, like, let's make sure everybody knows who Mike Taylor is. So, why don't you give us a little bit of your background, your career journey, and how you ended up at WWT as their chief technology officer.
Yeah. No, thank you again for having me. And yeah, really enjoyed the event down there in Dallas. We'll get into it here today, but just I think everybody, the passion for learning, the excitement around AI and the possibilities has us all learning from one another. So happy to share a little bit more about what we're seeing in the market today. But so my name's Mike Taylor. I'm the CTO at Worldwide. I've been with the company now for 25 years, believe it or not, and started off as an intern at Worldwide. I
Wow.
was
Huh.
a business undergrad and started off there in their finance and accounting department. Worked there for a brief stint, and then moved over to the technology team. And just kind of probably like many of your listeners, grew up through the rank and file of technology, working back in the days of Solaris and Solaris zones and Oracle databases and all that type of stuff.
Hmm.
Was kind of how I grew up, and really fortunate to have found Worldwide. We were
Yeah.
participating at that point in time in kind of the growth of the .com and communication boom that was going on. We had the opportunity to secure some pretty large contracts and programs that helped us kind of work through the .com bubble and come out of that on the other side in a really strong position.
Yeah.
So we're,
Hmm.
these days we're still a privately held, closely held company. We've got approaching 11,000 employees globally, and
Hmm.
doing all things in and around technology services, and I think here lately more so around digital AI and the boom that's going on in terms of what the possibilities are with AI.
Yeah. Yeah. That's one what really an amazing story with WWT. And you personally being there for 25 years, that speaks volumes of the company. It's like it's the culture there has got to be really really
Yeah.
good. It's like I was trying to think of like the adjective, but it's like, for executives to be there for multiple decades, that basically says is that is a really healthy and vibrant culture, within that organization. So that's actually really nice to hear. I really didn't know that. And then also that, for you to have, such a long, storied career, with them starting as an intern. that's all. And then you raise up, to be the CTO. That's a great story.
It's
It's a
been a
super super
blast,
story.
and I would tell you, I think our secret sauce is a combination of that culture and the integration of that culture to technology. Which, if you're not moving fast, if you're not trusting one another, if you're not great to partner with, and in the midst of all the change and uncertainty that's going on, I just don't think we'd be able to keep up, or any company would be able to keep up. And so I think
Yeah.
it is equal parts, the opportunity that's created through growth, and then having a really important set of core values, and a culture that, from our perspective, really becomes our secret sauce as we think about how we work with partners, customers, organizations, and other teams like that.
Yeah, it's interesting. As you're talking, Mike, I'm thinking, like, with all the discussions we've had with the consumers, like, who are your customers, never have I really heard a disparaging word about WWT. I hear disparaging words about a lot of the vendor community, but really never about WWT. And I think, it's like, you guys really must know how to partner, and deliver and set expectations right and be able to manage those. So, hats off to you guys, and I think your career there is kind of testament, to that, as well. So it's great,
It's been
super,
fun, and
you know.
I don't know if it's 25 more, but I definitely want a few more years at Worldwide for sure.
Awesome. All right, great. So you have a lot kind of under your org. One is the lab, but why don't you describe a little bit about kind of like, what you manage at WWT, and what your kind of role and responsibility
You
is there.
bet. Yeah. So it's amazing to work in technology for a technology company. I think, a lot of the folks that, attend the conference, and I'd say, are in and around the space. It's really cool when you connect with technology leaders working in technology companies. I think we have a great cohort, set of relationships there. And I think this is no more true than at Worldwide. Um, so my mission ultimately is to take kind of at one bookend what we're seeing in the market, to even all the way to what we adopt and what we use internally. And I'll talk more about this. I talked about this at the ONUG event in Dallas there around, we're talking to our customers about AI outcomes, but we've got right now 7 parallel paths on internal use cases where we're deploying, retrieval augmentation. We're looking at, leveraging different models and different infrastructures and things like that. So I'd say it's connecting what we do internally to the technology we consume, we offer to our customers, and to our employees, all the way to what we're out in the market talking about and helping deliver in terms of digital and AI outcomes. And what sits in the center of that is what you had alluded to in the ATC, our Advanced Technology Center. And recently, in the context of the AI boom, we announced an AI proving ground, and in conjunction with that, we also
Yeah.
have a cyber range set of events around the immutable data structures, and helping our customers go through anything from the gamified sort of events of a cyber range all the way down to kind of deeper, more specific use cases. But that crown jewel, if you call it that, sort of sits in the center in the Advanced Technology Center, where we've gotten amazing support from our partner ecosystem in terms of technology that
Mm.
they're helping us deploy and integrate with some of the open platforms now in the AI market space. And that AI proving ground for us is really kind of the center point between the evaluation of emerging technology providers, as you've seen, and we talked about this. I
Mm.
think we even had a few keynotes, on this at the event, where our, I say our longstanding partners in the OEM community, they're making big bets here too, right? In terms of
Yeah,
the
yeah.
AI that
Mm.
they're integrating into the core of their products. And it's not just the software as a service providers, that we're accustomed to, but these are the big infrastructure players who have been out there, including the cloud providers. And we think the proving ground is a place for our customers to come in and learn from an objective perspective how that roadmap is
Mm.
being executed, and what they can count on in terms of running, operating, and securing their enterprises.
Yeah, I think that, frankly, and that's, I think, why the relationship between WWT and the ONU community works so well, because you guys are, independent there, and then you can kind of, I think the role that I look at the lab is to provide design patterns which de-risk deployments. They basically show that these combinations of products, to solve this particular use case actually works. And so you kind of like, now you don't have to do guesswork and do a lot of piloting and so forth. But I think it's that independence that is really kind of unique, in the industry. And I think that's why a lot of folks kind of gravitate, to you all. I think having the lab is huge. It's absolutely huge, and the $500 million that you all are investing in kind of the AI component, of the lab is huge as well. It's the only lab that I know of in the industry that is now looking at various different use cases and design patterns, so that companies can have a really good understanding about, if they invest in these particular technologies in these particular ways, you're going to get this outcome. So it's like, that's a huge way to kind of shorten sales cycles, and also just to accelerate kind of the time to value for, many in the consumer space, as well. So it's like, yeah, I'm bullish on like your lab resources, and love to see like more design patterns from them. And I know we're working with Neil Anderson on that, as well. I know you guys already have a bunch, but I think we might be able to do some things together, as well.
Yeah,
So
it's one of those. We look at, we look at the market, and we look at, we feel like wherever there is significant disruption, there's huge opportunity. And I'd say one of
mm,
the advantages that we have at Worldwide is our executive leadership team, our CEO is so connected to our business that, the process to declare that we're going to invest $500 million in AI was a very quick one. I could tell you that. It was like,
mm,
look, we all know where this is
yeah,
going. We've got to go, and we've got to move. And we
yeah,
did so very quickly. And I've been overwhelmed with the amount of support that we've gotten from our partner community in this journey as well. How do we get in the AI proving ground? How do we make sure this capability is represented in the AI proving ground? And, it's become a difficult job for myself and a few others, Neil and his teams, to say, how do we even
mm,
prioritize, everything we could go after in terms of the proving ground? And most of that, though, I'd tell you, is informed by our customers who have, specific questions, needs, or technology they want to evaluate. But that the whole idea and sort of, genesis of the ATC is, we understand, even in the transition of AI, our customers, they don't have a budget, that's going to make all these things, or the capacity of talent to make all these things happen in 1 year. So we're trying to
yeah,
de-risk both and optimize kind of the decisions they're making today, but also help sequence the decisions they're going to make kind of going into the future. And that's around high performance architectures. It's around, as we discussed, in the panel and in the keynote, the network
mm,
traffic patterns and some of these base things that are experiencing monumental shifts in
yeah,
consideration. And how do we sequence those decisions together better? Because the coaching and advice we're given to both our sales teams and our customers is that there shouldn't be, even in its most sort of transactional, of events, there shouldn't be any piece of technology a customer is not looking at without at least a lens to the AI use case and how that is going to impact future consumption or optimization of that network or that technology. It's that important,
yeah,
we feel.
yeah, yeah. Especially the traffic pattern changes, the latency requirements that are also shifting as well. Yeah, those. I'm glad you brought like, a lot of that up, and also into the kind of the construct of like um, future planning and kind of short-term ROI and long-term
Yeah.
ROI. So let's, before we kind of like, kind of go into an AR ROI discussion, because it's an important discussion to have right now. Um, I just maybe want to like, I'll give you some time to maybe express, are there like maybe one, two, three major use cases that you're seeing more common? Like I saw, and we'll put this in the notes as
Mhm.
well. Like WWD put together like this really great graphic. It has these various different vertical industry sectors, and it has various different use cases. So it's a really great matrix, and we'll make that available to everyone. But I thought like, you get to see this, really from kind of the top down. Is there any particular use cases that you're seeing more frequently? that are like, wow, everyone is like focusing on this, this use case right
Yeah,
now.
I think there's a shift going on, even in the midst of the last couple of months here, where I think to no fault of our own, we were all sort of trained and, the first experiences we had with this were very much about language. They were about, interacting with
Right.
a bot, right? This sort of third party thing where we could pop out to a browser or, an app on our phone and ask questions in natural language and get those responses back, and that kind of, for good or bad, sort of trained us, that, oh well, this is the use case we want to go after. And the core fundamentals of what we've seen is these models are really good at, both understanding, language, and then formulating responses back. And so call center use cases, we've seen those even in the digital transformation sort of hit their like upper limit of what technology could offer.
Yeah.
And then this generative language development piece that comes out is accelerated the value that can be delivered in those. And so that was a natural one that came up. We're trying to coach our,
I love that use
yeah.
case. So let me, I love that use
Well,
case because it's like finally I don't have to go through like some voice menuing tree, to kind of like get to like some person or some answer. I can actually interact with the company. I really can't wait till that is ubiquitous. I'm so glad you brought
yeah,
that
the
one
world's
up. I
high
love that
fiving
one.
each other right
Yeah,
now for that one, right? Like we're all pretty pumped about
that's like
a better experience when when you dial into something or when you interact with a chatbot, right? And so, but that language piece was really
yeah,
important. We're seeing the
yeah,
other use case. We're seeing customers who want to take um, structured documentation. We're doing this for a major
mm,
service provider right now, where you're taking kind of troubleshooting instructions, work instructions, very clear sort of definitions around how products or service offerings are supposed to work, training models against those, doing some fine tuning in there, and then turning that around and offering that out to technical staff that are keeping up with different components of infrastructure, that are working there.
mm,
The pattern that we're seeing more, and I think this is where this stuff starts to get really exciting, in terms of how we think about it, is we're going more from these sort of like secondary or dual screen sort of considerations where I'm operating my primary app, then I'm coming over here to do something,
mm,
to
yeah,
everything in the market's talking about these agentic models, which is, essentially, how do we take these capabilities of AI and actually integrate them into the core of the applications that we're doing, into the business process, the value stream that exists within the business services that we offer. And I think that's where, Nick, we
um,
see this massive confluence of sort of the traditional application operating environment to higher orders of outcomes, different needs from
yeah,
a high performance or just any general enterprise architecture consideration, as these capabilities are getting integrated natively into applications that do customer service, quoting, financial modeling for financial analysts, healthcare advice and agents that are there. Nobody likes the dual monitor kind of setup, in terms of how they function and operate. And I think as we integrate more of these agents natively to the applications, we're going to see different demands on, not just our infrastructures and architectures, but we're going through intensive training right now of all of our application teams and litigating some of the, value, and I'll say loosely religion between, okay, does it need to be Python? Could it be JavaScript? And how
mm,
do we congeal these skill sets together to create, a new, a new role or a new version of skills within the IT teams that function and operate these architectures. It resembles a little bit of what we went through, I
yeah,
think, all of us, when we started introducing automation as a core functionality. It wasn't just good enough to know
mm,
routing tables and routing protocols and different things like that. We had to step our game up to, pick up different languages and programming languages for the purposes of automation. We're seeing some of those same trends play out, very, very quickly, in terms of application development and the integration of these AI capabilities natively to the applications versus that dual screen sort of experience or out of band interaction.
yeah. I love, frankly, I think the word is integration because like you know, at the last meeting that we had in Dallas, we presented a model of the AI ecosystem, right? And so it had at the very bottom, it had kind of hardware, then it
Yeah.
had infrastructure products, and then it had frameworks which are becoming commoditized, and it had a whole bunch of AI applications, which are those dual screen things you were
Yeah.
talking about, right? You're kind of doing something, and then you're going over here, and you're coming back. We've modified that model now. Like on top of that are a set of now AI APIs. And those APIs interact with whether those are developers writing new applications and programs or their existing applications that are calling upon and utilizing that stack, that AI stack, so that there is integration. That is where all the money is going to
Yeah.
flow. That's the return. Like I'm so bullish on that. I'm so glad that you brought that up because I think the arc of this industry, clearly we went from language, and there are other sectors, and we'll talk about those in a second, but like whether that's in the automotive industry, in the healthcare industry, what have you. But I think general purpose, business, it's the kind of the integration of AI into everything that we do, and it's supercharging existing legacy applications and further enhancing digital outcomes, for businesses. I'm just, that is, I'm so glad you brought that
No, we talked
up.
about
Yeah.
it. You hit on this in your keynote as well. I think that
Mhm.
each of these sort of inflections of in the introduction of technology, and we can go back, way back if we wanted to, from the days of client server to this kind of mesh network and federated sense of what we've built, to say that our use, like what businesses want to create ultimately is value and efficiency, or differentiation and efficiency, in terms of what's out there.
Mhm.
For us, this is just a significant, but it's another capability that can be layered on top of limitations that we've all faced with digital transformation, or IT optimization. We hit a
Mhm.
ceiling there where we didn't have another tool to get us maybe over the next hump or to the next set of efficiencies. And we feel very, very optimistic, bullish on what this is going to mean, both to the business outcome side of things, as well as what we can create in terms of resilience, reliability, and security for for high performance and enterprise architecture.
Yeah, because we've been talking about mostly around kind of the AI app side of things, and you alluded to it, and that is like AI is becoming integrated into the protocol stacks, like of a lot of these products, whether those are kind of AI routers, AI
Yeah.
switches, AI firewalls. Like Tom Gillis presented a really great view on kind of an AI firewall, at the meeting that we had
Right.
in Dallas, and in fall we're going to see a whole slew of AI
Yeah.
products, and so it's really okay. So now empowering these products to deal with those changes in traffic patterns, to eliminate a lot of the toil that operational teams are burdened with, today, and to really kind of automate both net ops and security ops. So I think there's these two kind of activities that are happening, in the industry, and they're happening in unison and at lightning speed. And that's the arc of the applications and the integration that we just talked about, and then also like how infrastructure products are fundamentally changing to address basically age-old problems that we've had in our
Yeah.
industry. It's like, there's like 750,000 open recs, for security
Right.
engineers. There's like that ain't going to get
Right.
filled. That gap is like too big. And the same thing on the network engineering side. So that so this is kind of the best hope, I think, to kind of close that gap and make organizations much more efficient, and frankly build infrastructure that's much more trusted, much more robust. Addresses the needs and requirements better, and hopefully is guided by policy. But anyway, I'm sorry. I think I'm going
No,
off on a
you're
little
good.
bit of a tangent. So,
No, Tom, I just say Tom's presentation, around almost I'd say this confluence of sort of a digital twin of your network, I think really got
mm,
the audience thinking and discussing sort of what is possible here. And back to kind of what we had talked about previously, I think it's a really good example to just spend a second on, to say, like, that wasn't a chatbot kind of thing that was going on. This was pattern
Yeah.
recognition inside of a network that was making suggestions and allowing you to observe, out of band configuration changes in the context of a live network. And so for me, I think that was a moment just kind of like looking around the room as we were thinking beyond the chatbot kind of thing. I think that was
Yeah.
a moment, and we're going to see more of that. I think you got me a little excited, for the event coming up here in the fall of like, so it'll be,
Yeah.
5 or 6 months out from that. What are we going to see there? I mean, what's gone on now in 5 or 6 months that is going to,
Yeah.
continue to sort of disrupt the thinking and evolve what we all believe is possible here.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you. I'll share like one little tidbit. So Svigal, he's kind of the CTO at the Memorial Sloan Kettering, Cancer Institute. All right. So it's like the kind of best research cancer institute, in the
Mhm.
world. So Svi's built their AI infrastructure. You guys probably worked with them, to build it. And so Svi is going to talk about the outcomes that that Sloan is getting, and these are improving human condition
Yeah.
outcomes. These are not like ROI, and a better
Yeah.
experience buying a pair of Levi's. It was like, okay, certain cancers are being cured. He's going to talk about that, and then also the pace of cancer research has accelerated as of today by a decade by the modeling that's now
Yeah.
enabled. And so it's and that so that's I think when we're gonna talk a little bit about, like, I think what one of the big topics in the industry in a second. But I think when I look at that, and when it comes from Svi and it comes from Sloan, it's like that's got
Yeah.
weight to it. That's got some
No, and
significant weight,
you hear
to
stories
it.
like that,
You
Nick,
know.
and you think about it. I don't think, I'm a for the teams, and folks that know me, I'm pretty practical about things. I think we're stepping through the right gates, and
Hmm.
it's a strength or a weakness depending on your point of view, but it is kind of who I am and how I think about things. I balance this statement. I don't say it without thought. Is I go back and I don't know the precise quote that Jensen said, but we are in the midst of one of the greatest kind of transitional moments in humanity. And I believe that,
Hmm.
and I think
Yeah.
it is going to be something that, that both on the healthcare outcomes, standpoint, on just the productivity of human beings. And I know there's a lot of concerns. There's a lot of bad that could happen and a lot of things that, could be concerning with this, but I tend to be pragmatic but optimistic about what and where this is going to happen. I think those stories, the development of the drugs that go with, like the curing or the treatment and the management of some of these diseases, harmonizing that whole sort of supply chain between research, drug development, drug production. These are things that have us very excited as we're working in and across the healthcare segments, from the
Hmm.
the research to the drug makers to even the insurance and payees that can see the outcomes that this work creates and change their plans
Hmm.
to to better suit and fulfill what we're doing. It's a big task, but I'm telling you, we're up for it, I think, and I'm excited to see how we go about taking stuff like
Hmm.
this on. It's going to change lives. It already has.
Yeah, I think the kind of the whole quality of life, discussion, the human condition change that we're about to see is just light years from what we've experienced in other in other transitions that we've seen, like in our industry. And we saw a big one with the internet. We've been really fortunate to participate in
Right.
that. And I think now it's like, being able to participate and build an infrastructure where businesses get to like work on their miracles. There's going to be so many
Yeah.
miracles,
Yep.
across all these different industry sectors. It's like, I'm so happy to be healthy and alive right now
Yeah.
because I get to see it and enjoy it. I'm bullish. So, anyway, but I think, um, one, one question. So, like, if you're in an IT group in a relatively large organization, what would you suggest? Like, what are the, and you haven't really started yet, which is like you're kind of behind the wheel if or the curve if you haven't started. But let's assume that position. What would be one of the first things that they should do?
Yeah.
That they'll get like really good return.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where I think if you're in an organization today, in particular, say a Fortune 2000 company, I'm certain that somewhere in your organization there's a strategy, there's a group that's kind of leading those efforts, and I would just encourage you to lean into and go actively discover like what is going on there and how does it ultimately connect with work that you're doing or work that you're planning to do, because I guarantee you it does. And we
Mm,
see different degrees and varying maturity in, one, the establishment of those strategies, but two, just the organizational change of letting the groups and teams know what's going on,
mm,
with that. And the second piece, I'd say, each of these technology transitions we go through, you brought up kind of the advent of the internet and connectivity and things, is I don't think there's ever been a technology transition like this that isn't or is as well documented as what we're going through here. The amount
mm,
of, whether it's podcasts that you're hosting, different videos and training that are available on YouTube, this stuff has been democratized in terms of our ability to access this knowledge and go get it. And so put on,
mm, true.
put on your work
Mm,
boots and and get to work, get out there looking at some of this and find the folks that, that you relate to or the topics, but they're there. Just go get them, go consume them, So I think those are broadly applicable really, to anyone that's out there. The second comment I'd make though is go back to maybe a previous statement on, every one of you listening to this or out there, you've got a budget, you've got strategic initiatives that you're managing on. You need to understand the how and why that connects to an AI strategy, either near term in terms, the next 6 to 12 months, or even thinking about the considerations that may come up around demands on storage, demands on network, the application platforms, and just, for those that are out there scratching their head on some of this stuff too, I'd look at, never in the history of silicon have the folks providing these chipsets been more invested in adding software capabilities to this. So this isn't,
mm,
don't think of it like it's a hardware or it's a software thing. It's both. I mean, these have become integrated
yeah.
platforms, on top of the silicon and in conjunction with the memory systems and other things that are there. This is not a hardware only speeds and feeds. You see each of the large chip
Mm,
makers actively going at what I'd call kind of certainly the IaaS management layer, but even more so the PaaS side of how these environments are going to work. So whether you're coming at it from an infrastructure lens, an app development standpoint, you're going to meet in the middle on how these products are being developed and the capabilities that
mm,
they're trying to bring to market. So everybody should be in the game on this, learning about it and
yeah.
understanding how it relates to what they do.
Yeah, yeah, those are two really great pieces of advice. I think I want to add one for
Yeah,
you, which you already said. So I'm going to
yeah,
steal something you said, and that's the whole structured, unstructured documents, memos, all of that. That's in your organization. I see a lot of that. A lot of companies, especially IT teams, deploying systems that allow them to access that all of that structured and unstructured, not so much data, but really just kind of like notes and configurations and so forth, to help them both troubleshoot, do new configurations, check to see what they actually
yeah,
have in their facilities, as well. But so a third
yeah.
one.
And that
Okay, all right, great.
I- and we were going through topics and things for the discussion here today. I think one of the patterns we see, regardless of use case, we kind of talked about in the beginning, is getting getting the data organized, getting it, developing a center of excellence around uh,
Yeah.
the data sources, any of the regulatory concerns that exist on where the data can reside, where it should be, governance, all these things that, gosh, that doesn't sound exciting as you think about the art of the possible and everything that could kind of be there with AI. But those are really the the base functions and the hard yards, frankly, that our customers have to carry to create these sort of outcomes. So organizations who have had strong rigor and discipline around data centers of excellence, they've had certified
Mm.
data sources that they've worked to congeal across the different enterprise systems that they work in. Almost every use case that we start with in terms of some of the AI accelerator work that we're doing, going out, grabbing a use
Mm.
case, doing an MVP, leveraging the proving ground to produce that for our customer, we end up coming back and saying, this is a great proof of concept. We can scale that out for this use case. Now let's go back and
Mm.
start looking at the other sources of data that we want to begin integrating into that MVP and expanding the growth and reach of it. And so that the data, we call it like a center of excellence, a centralized operating model around data
Yeah.
governance and AI solutions development is beyond the tech, kind of becomes,
Yeah.
a really important core function that we're coaching our customers through and integrating them with.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up. You're right. It's so important. And I think I'm kind of like gleaming 2 points out of that. One, we had Mike Milligan, from
Oh yeah.
FedEx,
Yeah.
right, their GRC, officer, talking about putting in, governance, for the use of AI, and so that freed up their develop. Once they had that in place, that it freed up their developers to actually start using it. So they put the guardrails in, and I think that's part of of what you're saying. And the other part too, you brought this up, and I think actually Sony Giandarro brought this up the next
Mhm.
day, and it was, there's a part of this is it's also kind of time to clean up, the infrastructure with all of the stacks of products that are very seldomly used, so kind of clean it up. So like, you reduce the amount of data load, and data by data, think I'm referring to a different set of data than you were just referring to, but it's more like the infrastructure
Yeah. The
data,
logging,
the,
CMDB
yeah,
stuff.
right.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, and so try to, clean the house up there, so you have a much higher signal, so that AI models can actually
Yeah.
operate better without kind of going through all that noise. So I think those were maybe a couple of other, pearls of wisdom that
No,
maybe
you're right
come
on.
out,
I
and I
really,
wanted to
Michael's
amplify
segment was
that with
great.
yours.
I liked, the way I remember just taking this note as he was talking through it. It was, the saying, and folks have been using this for a while. I have no idea, who came up with it initially, but the idea was, as he was explaining what they were doing at FedEx, it was very much you want to go fast, you go alone. You want to go far, you go together. And they were very aligned,
Mm.
sort of in terms of, hey, we know the hard yards to carry here aren't going to be the sexy work that produces the front page article necessarily, but it's going to lay the groundwork for 5 or 6 of those that could come down in the future. And I think that alignment that he highlighted was critically important. And I'm sure, I mean, Nick, you work with a lot of different companies. The mileage varies there, right? Like in terms of the maturity
Yeah.
that they have,
Mm.
and that is something that will produce critical speed and mass as it's assembled into a center of excellence.
Yeah, that's a great. Thanks for bringing that point up. I totally forgot that, and that was like actually a great quote.
Yeah, I liked
From
it. Yeah, yeah,
from Michael. All right. So I want us to kind of like this going like I had two other kind of topics I wanted to, and they're kind of closely related. One is that there's discussion. They're kind of like the contrarians that are now starting to pop up in the industry, and they're saying, well, listen, we spent, we being mostly the cloud providers, spent about $1 trillion, and they're continuing, and that's just really, it's actually close to like 600 billion, that have been spent. Where's when is the
yeah,
ROI, and when will shareholders start to demand a return on that investment? So their COOs, maybe their CEOs and COOs, they kind of get the big picture, and they said, okay, great, you got to spend here. There's a competitive aspect, to this as well. But there'll be a certain point in time where they're saying, okay, listen, we put all this money in there. What are we getting for it? So and I think that I don't think it's trickled down yet to like the consumer. in mass, but I'm starting to hear that a little bit. It's like, and they're, it's like it's not like really. Okay, you've got to like have every dot
Yeah,
or every I dotted and T crossed. We kind of get it, and we're going to kind of give you some runway here, but we want but like within 18,
yeah.
24 months, there's got to be like some return. So anyway, have you kind of followed any of that discussion, and have you thought about it?
Definitely. Yeah. And I think it's, the 12 to 18 month, I think is completely a reasonable expectation, for customers. And I mean, to achieve an ROI in those, not to start seeing
Mhm.
returns, but to get yourself back to a point where, you can quantify that you're at a gain, in terms of what you're operating there. So I'd look at the quick win stuff that we've done. I talked about the call center pieces. These are both, I'd say, a mix of operating efficiency as well as you said, and we virtually high five each other on it, but the quality, right? Just how do you
Mm.
measure the quality of the services being offered there? Those are,
Yeah.
in our world, those are 6 to 9 months sort of ROIs. And the real barrier of adoption is more about change management of the people and teams than it is about getting the technology to
Yeah.
work, or to function. I think where it's,
Yeah.
where we have kind of the contrarian points of view that come up is, I want to baseline us in a sense that, and I'm not using this to justify anything, but like go back to, the statistics on major ERP upgrades or other major projects and other transformations. It was like a 50 or 60% failure rate on those projects, right? Like, they didn't work, they were over
Yeah.
budget, they, these are hard and, hard projects to take on. But when I look at the organizations that again are starting with that center of excellence model, picking off
Mm.
MVPs in terms of their methodology, managing or working through the change management side of things, what we see is those one or two MVPs, the opportunity to kind of continue to extend those feels endless. And an
Mm.
example I'll give you is
Yeah.
we're working with a retail customer right now who, we started off focused on customer loyalty. So trying to figure out, how do we take data around loyalty, so interactions, both, purchases as well as digital interactions, taking that and then using that as taking the use case of customer loyalty and rewards and incentives for that, but then also then taking the patterns of those customers, what they purchase, when they purchase it, and why. We're doing this retail,
Mm.
grocery, other use cases, but think, broadly retail, and saying, how do we take those same consumer behaviors and integrate that into supply chain use cases around supply and demand planning? And it's like, we have this
Mm.
great, kind of curated source of data that we've examined and can help anticipate or even drive customer behavior. Now with
Yeah.
our AI teams and our application development teams, we're saying, how do we take that data and build that out more for a supply chain use case to say, do the marketing incentives or the customer loyalty incentives, how does that match up with the supply and demand curves that exist within the stores, to say, okay, now we've harmonized this both in terms of kind of the demand creation, if you
Mm.
will, as well as the
Yeah.
supply management.
Supply
And
chain.
for companies that are making large purchases, holding that inventory, for a period of time, these are huge
Yeah.
swings, in terms of the impact that can have on balance sheets. Now, I'll say it's early
Yeah.
days. We're piloting this, at a subset of their stores and locations, but the forecasting that we're generating from this is orders of magnitude higher than what they had been doing, kind of accumulating this information from the store owners and operators. And in a period
Yeah.
of about
Mm.
60 days, they've gone, from sort of this matchup of the manual thing they used to do to the AI generated thing. And they're now getting rid of the manual entirely. And those store owners and operators can figure out on how do they better serve their customers? How do they, put more attention to, the folks in the feet on the street in their stores versus the back office planning, buying, and inventory management side of things.
God, that's what a great use case. And I actually know a little bit about this. My wife was a buyer at a store called Bradley's, which is defunct,
Okay.
now. But she had like under like a like in her, mid 20s, she had like a $30 million budget, and she's like, traveling to Asia to source,
Yeah.
product, in New York, to source products. She'd get these reams of like IBM, 360
With the
output,
perforated edges on the sides.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. She get that like every Monday. If it rained, the poor thing, she would not get out of bed on a Sunday if it rained. She'd stay
Because
under the
nobody went in
covers
to buy stuff.
because no one went in to buy. So she's like, oh my god, my numbers are going to be all messed up, and it's like, and that management, like retail is hard. The margins are so
Right.
thin, there. So you get mess ups, that are out of your control, and they freak out.
Cost of
They
inventory,
just
cost of capital can be a significant impact, yeah, to what they're doing.
so,
And even you mentioned, like,
so
we're now starting to bring in and look at in the incremental steps are the ones that are become easier because the base and the source is better. But we're looking at climate and weather data to say, okay, how do we incorporate? Is the 14-day forecast showing that it's going to be hotter or cooler, rainier or
mm,
drier than normal or expected, and starting to experiment with integrating those knobs into things. But the work to integrate that data is marginal because the larger data set, which is the customer buying patterns, it's like that was the
yeah,
80% of the hard work, and now the value you
yeah.
can get from these other inputs is what we're testing out.
Yeah, what a great use case. I'm sure, like, the life of those buyers is a lot better. It's like I would think that they're not reducing the number of buyers, but like now, if they had buyers that maybe weren't that great, and now all of a sudden they have all these tools available to them, they can be really great.
Completely agree.
And so it's like you just get an elevation upshift, from a productivity point of
Yeah.
view. Yeah, that's a great use case. So yeah, so so going back to the whole like ROI, discussion. I'm kind of like of the view is that yeah, you have to ask the question. If you're like a proper
Yeah.
business person, you do. But like I think it's way premature. And I think I go back to like the internet boom, and the amount of fiber that was laid, in the late
Yeah.
1990s, and so a huge amount of money was spent on that, and then the .com bust came, and then there was like bankruptcies and the telecom companies that kind of like because of large capital outlay for that, and so but like 7 years after the .com boom, it's like thank God we had
Yeah.
all of that that
Yeah. Could you
fiber in the
imagine it
ground,
not having any of that? Right.
yeah, so it's like it's a funny thing. Sometimes you just can't. Nobody can really just see the future, but that period of time from the late 1990s into like the early noughts, transformed the global
Yeah.
economy, and this is going to do the same in a bigger way. I remember like the presentations like in the late 90s, like when Mosaic and Netscape were first introduced. You'd see presentation after presentation that the internet changes everything. And then it was kind of hyperbolic, to kind of say that, but frickin'
Yeah.
it
It kind of
did.
did. Yeah. Kind
It's
of did.
kind of did, and AI is going to be no different. So I think it's you know, but I think the ROI piece is like just the use case you just talked about. The other ones that we'll see like in the fall time frame as well, how these new products are going to be behaving and how networks and infrastructure will be behaving. I don't think the ROI is going to be a hard argument to make, and so we'll see that
Yeah.
we're seeing that already and we'll just see it compounding itself and if you're not making the investments now, then you're going to get smoked. You really will be behind your competitors, and once you get significantly behind, um, it's going to be
Hard to catch
pretty
up.
hard to
Yeah.
catch
You,
up.
you want to be
you
building
know
leads,
yeah,
not trying to close, right? Close on it. And,
yeah,
I agree with you. I think it's a, it can be interpreted the wrong way in terms of like, you got to do this to be in the game, but it really is that it is because the,
mm,
the rate of speed and change that your competitors are going to be able to introduce, you're not going to be able to close that gap, or it's going to be really hard to do it. And
yeah,
I say that going back to I'm a pragmatic person. I'm not telling everybody out there to go and invest in a massive farm to do training of these things, but it ought to be a concept that's incorporated into everything you're doing. Or I have concerns
Yeah.
you're going to have misses, in terms of opportunities you could capitalize on now, even if those things are just setting the table for the future.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think, probably the best example of that is probably Tesla. It's like you look at like kind of Tesla's model and like 12.5, like, it's, full service, driving is just like off the charts
Yeah.
great. It's like, and there's no comparison. Like obviously their market cap shows like how much bigger they are than all the legacy, companies. And even like with the downturn in the EV stuff, they're weathering that like, just like
Hmm.
nothing, versus like God, look at Ford, or GM. So anyway, one last
Yeah.
point, on that. So I think we kind of hit the whole ROI and the $1 trillion spend thing, um, but a vision. And I kind of get the sense that we maybe have somewhat of a shared vision, in here, and I think you can think of vision in multiple different ways. You know, um, One way that well, okay, I'm asking you the question. I don't want to answer my own question. Sorry. Go for it.
It's sometimes it's better when you do. Yeah.
No, no. So where do you think, what does both our industry and the economy look like in the next 3 to 5 years? We'll keep it relatively short time span.
Yeah. I think that we are facing, and I'll focus on technology first and kind of get broader than that. But in the midst of technology, you mentioned in the security space, but we're facing a significant labor and talent shortage. And it's only going to compound worse just as you look at the demographics of our population. And that's a US based problem. I mean, about every country, where we're, I won't get it, but where we're supposed to look like a Christmas tree, right? In terms of the population distribution, we're more of
Yeah.
a cylinder, with about, every country kind of taking that shape, and some inverted actually, with the exception of, I think
Mm.
India is probably the most, um, immune to that in terms of the distribution. So I look at this and I say, we
Yeah.
need major efficiencies delivered within what we do, because we're facing a major labor shortage, and our economies
Mm.
continue to grow. Um, and so I look at this, and it's sort of a right place, right time kind of thing, where we need this. We really do, to
Mm.
drive more efficiency and productivity from our economy, as it was. We talked about the GDP side of things. Our GDP has been relatively stagnant. Some of that's
Mm.
associated to labor pressures, but this isn't just a U.S. thing. And it's not just a
Right.
technology thing. Our
Mm.
customers in retail and other spaces we talked about, they can't get people. They can't reliably get
Yeah.
people. And so I think this technology is going to be a huge enabler to take not just the current level of service we're accustomed to, increase the quality, the consistency of that, the reach. And I think it's going to have a significant impact on our businesses just at the point when we need it the most.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really great insight, and observation. I think I would, take that, and process it a little bit more. Like I think it's like once AI really starts to get hold in the economy, we should see the stock market go freaking
Yeah.
boom. Because the valuations of companies are really based upon productivity, and so if AI is delivering really gains in productivity, the multiples are going to increase, as well. So we should see a really increase, a pretty significant increase in kind of stock market and company valuations. I think even like the size of companies, it's like large companies will have fewer employees, um, because we can either do or the
Yeah.
same number, but they're growing, right? But then also the number of companies that are starting should skyrocket, as well, because there are new tools, new capabilities, a lot of new innovation
Yes.
that a new
Absolutely.
generation can leash. So I'm kind of thinking it's like there is a kind of a kind of structuring of the economy that potentially occurs here, and then all the economic metrics that productivity is in that formula. We should see a real
Yeah.
response, to that. And then I think on the medical side of things, it's like I'm so hopeful, there, and I'm always a little cautious on this stuff because we've been working on um, cures for chronic diseases for a very, very long time with improvements, but like not like
Yeah,
really step function
yeah,
increases. And I'm just hopeful, that what I'm seeing and hearing, comes to fruition, there. So I think an overall, increase in the quality of life and improvement in the human condition, as well. It's like it's a wonderful future.
I agree.
I think we're looking into,
It's an
you know.
amazing time to be
Yeah.
alive, and I think with it we have just a amazing amount and significant amount of responsibility to
Mm,
to take this on and do it in the right ways, securely, ethically. But in many ways, we're laying the groundwork as a collective community here, of what the next 50 to 100 years is going to look like, and that's exciting. I welcome that
yeah.
challenge, and I appreciate the role that all of us are playing in that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this is like one of those. There's a great scene from Gladiator, right? It's like what you do today will echo in
Yeah,
eternity,
yeah,
and it's like I'm kind of getting the feeling that it's like we're very fortunate to be able to contribute, to this. And I love your term, collective community,
yeah,
and so being able to do that and participate, in that, like what we build now will have a really big echo effect, for generations to come, and that's a wonderful opportunity,
yeah.
for us all to have.
Exciting stuff.
So, Mike, I think that's a good place to end
Yeah,
it.
no, it is. Thank you, Nick.
You know,
Thank you for
yeah.
having me on today, and thanks for everything you do, in and around the community as well. You guys have a great
Oh,
brand, and I think you do bring that, objective and at the same time provocative and informative point of view, to the market. And yeah, just happy to be a part of it.
well, thank you so much for those kind words, Mike. And it's really a pleasure having you, on. And thanks for sharing all your great thought leadership. And everyone, thanks for plugging in. We'll see you this
All
fall in New York City.
right, take care.